Hello, good afternoon. This is Nobel Ang again, and welcome again to Introduction to Philosophy. So, as we know, this is the first week of the semester. So, for the first 3 weeks of the semester, we will be touching on philosophy of religion. We mainly will be looking at arguments for and against the existence of God. So, for today I would like to take some time to talk to you about Saint Anselm's Ontological Argument. I've actually also posted a couple of notes online on Moodle for this week that will help you to. One of them is one of the files that I posted is actually an outline of the argument, which I'm about to go into. And the second document that I posted is actually, explains the problems. One problem with the Saint Anselm's ontological argument. So what I'm going to do here is to walk you through, talk to you about the argument itself. But when you have some time, please take a look at the files that I've uploaded as well in order to refresh and reinforce what I've said today. So Saint Anselm is a priest who lived in the 11th century. And he is well known for putting forth this ontological argument, which tries to logically prove the existence of God. So the idea is that what he tries to do is to show us that if you believe in God, if you define God in a certain way, then there is no way that God cannot exist. Or another way of putting it is to say that if you come up with if you agree that God should be logically defined in a certain way, then God, as logically defined in that way, has to exist. So very briefly, the argument goes like this. God is defined as that as the being than which none greater can be taught. Now, having said that, Saint Anselm then gets us to agree that that there are two kinds of things that exist in reality. There are things that exist both in reality and the understanding, and things that exist only in the understanding. And then he gets us to agree that among both these things, the things that exist both in the understanding and in reality are greater than the things that exist only in the understanding. So having established that, we now we now consider the position of the person who doesn't believe in God. Now, the person who doesn't believe in God, thinks that God is a being that exists only in the imagination or only in the understanding. Now, but remember that God is the being than which none greater can be taught. Now, if God is if God is really the being than which none greater can be taught, then it would be impossible for God to exist only in the understanding. Why? Because from what we have just learned above, a being that exists only in the understanding cannot be the being than which none greater can be taught, because if a being exists only in the understanding, then the version of him that exists in both in the understanding and reality will be greater than him. So therefore, in order for God to exist, he cannot just exist only in the understanding. He has to exist both in the understanding and in reality, which is another way of saying that God has to exist if we define God as the being than which none greater can be taught. So this is the argument very briefly, and we can see that there is a certain logical elegance to the argument, because this is what we call a valid argument. If you accept a certain definition of God, namely the being than which none greater can be taught, then the premise, and if you accept a certain set of premises, then the conclusion, which is that God exists, has to follow. So if God is the being than which none greater can be taught, then God has to exist. But we know that so this is the argument, as very very briefly, this is the argument itself. But there are also, you can start to see, if you think about it more carefully, you will see that there are certain problems with the argument. You will see that this argument, the one problem with this argument is that it is illogically makes a lot of, it is logically very elegant and makes sense, but you get a sense that you can put anything into the definition and prove the existence of the thing that you put into the definition, so long as so long as whatever you put in the definition is a quality than which none greater can be taught. So, for example, let's just forget about God for a moment and let's try something else. Suppose we talk instead of thinking about God, we think about a pink elephant. So, let's define a pink elephant as the being than which none pinker can be taught. Now, so if the pink elephant is a being than which none pinker can be taught, then then we apply the same premises. We also we say that anything that is pink can either be pink only in the understanding, in the imagination, or is pink both in the understanding and in reality. Now, again, using the same steps as Anselm's argument, we also say that let us also say that things that are pink both in the understanding and in reality are pinker than things that are pink only in the understanding. So now, but if the pink elephant is really the being than which none pinker can be taught, then it follows that the pink elephant has to exist both in the understanding and in reality. And if the pink elephant exists both in the understanding and in reality, then the pink elephant has to exist. So you can see that there is something very funny about Saint Anselm's argument, because you can, if you replace God with just anything which has the greatest of whatever quality you want, whether it is the pink elephant or the green goblin or whatever, then you can use this kind of argument to prove the existence of not just God but also pink elephants and green goblins. So something has gone terribly wrong here. What's the problem? Well, I think that the problem is that the argument itself is a formal argument. You can use it to you can use it to prove not just the existence of God, but of anything that has the greatest amount of whatever quality, whether it is pinkness or greenness or whatever. So what this shows is that Saint Anselm's argument for the existence of God is convincing to his audience, because his audience already believes in the existence of God. I mean, if you are somebody who's living in the 11th century who already believes in the existence of God, and you are just looking for a logical way to explain to a rational basis for your existence in God, then this argument would be very convincing, because all you have to do is to plug God as the being than which none greater can be taught into the argument itself, and you will be able to get to the conclusion that God exists. But what that means is that similarly, if you are a believer in pink elephants or in green goblins, then you will also be able to plug pink elephant and green goblins. Pink elephant is the being than which none pinker can be taught, and the green goblin is the